Hi everyone, I'm Anna. I've been doing tests for the 6th year now, working in Rostov-na-Donu. I try to contribute to test community. I attend meetups of developers and analysts as well. Recently, I've been doing tests for the web, and I would like to tell you about bug localization in apps. Why testers need to locate the bug causes. Most of the developers expect that we're going to describe bugs for them and explain the reason for a particular bug. Then developers won't have to waste time to reproduce bugs or to distract us from task at hand, so that we have to switch back to the bug that we worked on before, trying to remember what it was. And I'd like to use some of the cases from my experience to tell you what knowledge is required to locate a bug. A few words about the project. This is a web application that loads data from various social media like ВКонтакте, Instagram, or the others. So you use a special process that is dynamically adjustable. So preparing a reply and automatic putting it in the reply section of a particular social media. The first bug relates to ВКонтакте, VK. Many have personal accounts, communities, groups that have their moderators, and in order for our system to publish an answer on someone's behalf, you have to add it to a personal account. So a new feature came in when we had to test a new publication in VK. We started running tests, and we saw that the test where we checked answer to publication, the publication came from the admin of that group. This is clearly a bug. We have steps describing the bug. So here it is. We can send it to the developer and let them take care of that. But in reality, don't stop there. Always analyze why that bug occurred. So let's dissect this case and see why this bug came to be. So we have a web application. Customer or client interacts with the server. So what happens when a user tries to publish an answer? First, a request is sent to create the answer. Then there is another request to publish the answer, and you go to official API VK. So we need to know when the error occurs. Testers have access to browser development tools. First thing we need to do is whether a wrong value is sent from the front end, and having analyzed the parameters, we see that account is sent correctly. Then we need to check if the backend processes the value correctly. Perhaps the reply was saved associated with a different account. This is where we remember that in the process of publication there is request to official API VK, but the developers' tools don't provide information. They can't help us with analyzing if this request has been correctly followed through. So we need to use an additional tool, I mean logs. Typically a web app has logs, standard and additional, created to review web performance. For example, that applies to data loading and unloading because this is a pretty complicated process, and this is where the data is recorded as well. And then it is sent to API VK. To review logs, what I do is I use Kibana as an option to review data analysis. So in the process of log review, I find that for some reason, if you select a group account, then API VK receives admin, not group account. So the cause of the bug here was in the back-end section in the integration with official API VK. So this bug shows. So for a tester to realize how to review a bug, where to locate it, you need to know how the web app is set up. You need to be familiar with how to work with toolkit and be able to use logs as well. Let's go to the next bug. Users use an app, and there is a separate chapter or section where you can look up all users that logged into the system with current status, online or offline. If you're offline, I mean you closed your browser and logged out. So we have a test stand, and occasionally we have to update cache browser. And when a new update was deployed, I happened to be in the user list. I pressed Ctrl F5, and for some reason my current user has an offline status, even though I was online. I mean, I'm online, I know that, but it says offline. So we recorded that bug and started to getting to the bottom of it. As in previous case, first we go to developers tools to see what status comes back in the backend. Two options. One wrong status coming from the backend, or the status comes back as correct, but for some reason front end displays it incorrectly. I found that here it says offline status 30. So this is a back-end associated program. We have additional information that everything is fine with front-end, problems with the back-end. So let's try to understand why the back-end returns the wrong status. We need to use extra tools, databases. Testers need to use databases to see what data is stored. You would be better off if you know SQL, even though these are simple commands. So you have to select from the user table. So I sent a request to database, and I saw that my status is correct. code 10, which means I am online. How come? Backend returned the status 30, but in the database my code is 10, which means that in the process, or rather somewhere between the query from the user list, the status has somehow updated. So we need to understand how it got updated. Let's remember about logs. In this case, logs are in the database. So the log includes all queries sent to the database during the operation of the web. I looked up that log to see what happened after the page got updated. And it so happened that first a query was sent to update to status 30, which means I logged out. Then there was a select of the status, and after that the status update took place. So the front end came back with a wrong status, so it's a wrong ordering, and there was an issue in the backend section. This bug derives a conclusion that in order to find causes for a bug, it is essential to work with a database. Moving on, the next bug. Since system features a lot of data, you can run a search on the basis of different criteria, different parameters. Once I received the search results, I had to run an extra check, extra search, but there were no hits. I couldn't understand why, because it was definitely in the database. I checked it from another system and it was fine. I wanted to find what caused that situation. So first we go into the development tools to see if our post was in the reply. Perhaps it's there, but the front end doesn't display it. Maybe there is a data structure inconsistency, but there was no my post in the search results. To address that, you need to ask the architect if you can study the architectural scheme if your system is small and you can do it yourself. So the search was done on Elasticsearch, then a Celery applies, and we use Flower, and we want Elasticsearch to reflect new messages that are displayed in the system. So the post that was loaded hasn't been updated by Elasticsearch. So my post wasn't in the index, therefore it could not be found. So it wasn't a bug, but a feature. So this bug shows that in order to avoid situations that you believe it's a bug, but it's not a bug, a feature, you need to know how your system interfaces with the functionality that you test against, and it helps to locate bugs in the future. And the final bug is associated with analytics. We have an analytical section that can generate reports. Something broke down. If there is a good case, you have a loader, a report is generated, the user is happy. But here the report wasn't loaded, the loader was in a freezing mode. So what the problem was is more complicated. This is a pretty sophisticated architecture. When the user presses export, first a task is initiated to generate a report. The task is complete, report is generated, the database sends a link to the report, and this is a signal to download a report. So we can check each and every step, but better yet, since we have downloading issue, is it a downloading issue or a generation issue? We can check it against the developers tools. In Chrome there is a tab with all WebSocket connections. So the message hasn't arrived. So the front end wasn't signaled properly to download a report, which means that you have to follow each step to see if there are issues with report generation, to see if the query was properly followed through. If everything is fine, then you need to check if that file is physically present on the server. In our situation, the report was on the server, but the problem was that a message didn't come through WebSockets, which told us that testers cannot always correctly define the cause for a bug. This is quite normal, and you have to be realistic about time that you spend to localize a bug. Then I provided all bug-related information, and the developer tried to find out why that information didn't appear. And testers have access to repository, which also provides benefits in testing. For example, we have a separate analytical block based on SQL queries. You select a report and then you press a button, and when this task comes for me to test, I don't go to UI. First I go to repository to see key points of the tasking, whether the period, the time zone has been properly selected, and if all the parameters have been transmitted properly. I know that developers can do a bug, and sometimes they can mix up the fields, and 3 to 5 minutes are enough to spot a problem. And if there are no comments, I describe bug-related information, and in the meantime I can do something else. So this approach allows to capture bug as quickly as possible. So my conclusion, based on all of the example, is that testers need to know a few things, not only for bug hunting or bug tracking, but also for proper work. And this is understand how web application is structured, be able to work with the developer's tool, know how to analyze backend logs, and architecture knowledge of implementation details is a great plus. Thank you. We have 2-3 minutes for questions, so be brief with no backstory. Hi, thanks for the presentation. Useful one. Did you compare stats in your team? How many defects have been rejected because they were not bugs, but rather duplicates, or you lacked description? And how did the situation improve after you started utilizing this approach? We didn't do any stats. A tester had to locate a bug without understanding in detail what it is. We use common sense. Sometimes we are under time pressure before the deadline. We didn't keep any statistics. We had 2 testers, recently only 1, and about 15 developers. Anyone else? Hi, thanks for the presentation. I'd like to clarify something. Could you not review developers' code in the phase of code review? The developers do code review. Testers do not do code review. Or maybe you could ask developers to locate known cases and to cover them with unit tests. I didn't understand your question. What I mean is that by applying knowledge of previously found bugs, you could preventively address some of the problems. We are implementing, I'm trying to implement, I write cases for developers to look at certain key things. And frankly speaking, I can't quite catch the drift of your question.